Hey friends, hope you're doing well. In this short tips and tricks video regarding Power BI, I'd like to give you a few tips and tricks, which some of those you might already know, some of those maybe not, but hopefully at least one of them is helpful for your future report building. So let's get started. The first is about the different locations of data source, meaning if the data source location has changed, then of course normally when we click on refresh, we run into an error, right? So for instance, if that happens, most often then we go to click on transform data, and then in here we see that here, okay, the location can be found and has changed. Then we'd go to error, and then in here in the source we would change the location. But of course, if we have several tables, like I do here, that would be quite cumbersome to do this for each of the tables. So can we speed this up? Yes, we can. So let me just close this for now, go in here, and instead what we could do is go to transform data, but on a little down arrow here, click on this one, and then go to data source settings in here. Because this allows us, if we click this, to change the data source location directly in here by clicking on change data source and point to the new location. And of course, if we have, well, many tables from the same source, so Excel or CSV file, then of course that makes sense because this allows us to change the data source in one location, and this will then change the locations for all the tables. And this of course saves some time, and we don't have to also open the query editor directly. So that is the first tip I have for you. Next is about the refreshing of tables. Meaning, when we have a big data model regarding maybe a lot of tables or very big tables, then if we click on refresh in here, we sometimes have to wait a long time before the refresh is done, simply because we have big tables. But maybe we just wanted to actually refresh one single table. So instead of clicking refresh here, we could also go to the model view here, click on model view, and then go to the specific table we'd like to refresh, for instance the dates table here. And if I go and hover over the three dots, click there, and I go to, in this case, refresh data, then only this specific table gets refreshed, and the other tables remain the way they are. So this means that the refresh won't take that much time and goes much faster. And this is very helpful, especially if you only want to refresh maybe a small table, but you have a very big data model and you want to avoid waiting too long for the whole data model to refresh, especially if it's not needed. So that is my second tip for you. The third is about relationships. Now, whenever we create or load tables into Power BI, then depending on the settings in the options in Power BI, either the relationships will be, well, identified automatically for us and created or not. This is something we can specify in the data load settings inside the Power BI options. So this is something we have to decide for us. But what we can also try is go under the option which is on here, manage relationships, and there is an option to auto-detect relationships. Now please note that this option only works, of course, if the column names are the same in the table. Because otherwise, if the column names are too different, then Power BI will not understand that those two tables belong together by two specific columns which have completely different names, right? You have to keep that in mind. But still, you can try this if you want. If, for instance, relationships have not been detected automatically for specific tables with the same names of the columns, then give this a try and maybe it can help you. So let me just close this. This was the next one. And the other two tips I have for you is actually inside the report view, and I go there, and I already prepared here two little tables. So the first one is this one here, and the second one is this one, which is actually a slicer. But let's focus first on this one here. So as you can see here, we have currently a date and we have the total profit. So simply a measure and here a specific date. And the date is in a specific format. Now we all know that in Power BI we can use DAX and the format function, for instance, to format the date, for instance, also measure in a specific format. That can be done, but there's actually an easier way to do this. There are many ways, by the way, but the easiest way, which many people don't know, is if you go inside your visual, let's say in this case, in my case, a table, and you select the specific column you're going to currently use, which is date for me in here, then you can see that under the column tools we have here the formatting option, right? So which allows us, if I go there, to choose one of those formats in here. And please, here you can see this is a German weekday, but for you it would be for English name, English weekday name and so on. So far so good. But what if we would like to have a format which is not available in here? So can we create our own format? And can we do it without the format function? And yes, we can, because actually we can also click in here and remove what's inside and then specify our own format in here. So for instance, if I would say, I would like to see YYY, so the year, and then a dash, and then for instance the day, so double D, and then the month, double M in here, if I would like to, or specify it like that, and I press enter, then you would see that now I have the date format which I specified in here, simply by typing it with my keyboard. So there is no need to choose one of the predefined ones. We can also directly specify our own format in here if you want to do this. And the last tip I have for you here is related to the specific slices we have. And of course, there are new slices in here as well. I already showed you in one of the last videos, one of them. But for the default, the original slicer, which is still there, if you use them in your models, then what I would recommend, considering the user experience, is always opt in for the search option. Meaning, if you click on the three dots here, there's an option to enable the search. And if you tick this option, then you can see you got a search bar up here, which allows us to search for a specific, in my case, category. So for instance, if I like to, sort for drinks, I can search for drinks, right? And I can have it here. And if I click it, now of course my data gets sorted to the specific category in here. But let me just clear selection in here, and now we can see all of them again. So this is much more comfortable to the end user instead of having a long list. Even though you opt in for a drop-down list, it still makes sense to use the search option here because it's much better, right? Instead of searching, oh, what do I want to select? I can directly search here, the search option here, and then put exactly the slicer the way I want it. So that's just a better end user experience from my point of view. So that's it for these tips and tricks. So hopefully one of those was interesting and helpful to you. As always, thanks so much for watching and hopefully see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.